Hi, good morning, good day, good afternoon, whenever you're seeing this. I am Siena Songbird, and I wanted to jump on today and share a little bit about my personal journey to be on this path. Um, and I specifically wanted to go into a little bit of sort of how I got sick, what that was like, and how I got to where I am now. I was born in 1990 in Minnesota, USA, and I actually was a little bit jaundiced for, a brief period of time when I first came out. So for me, that indicates that there was already some compromised liver issues, whether it was inherited or the stress of having the umbilical cord cut so early or so fast. Any number of things. There was a little bit of a hint there. I was given all of the rounds of childhood immunizations, shots, and for 1990, I counted up that I think I had 27 shots. Some of them were combos. By the time I was a teenager, I had some anger issues when I was really little, like 3. Um, But in general, I was a pretty healthy and pretty happy kid, amazingly. And I started having a little bit more issues when I went through puberty, and there was some malnourishment and sort of I also developed some eating disorders, but I'd say even before then, the diet that I was consuming was low low on nourishment. But then I sort of doubled down on those efforts as a young teen, going through some periods of anorexia and then more into the like binge eating. And it became clear further on that I had some serious sensitivities to sugar and also alcohol, which is pretty much sugar. But I think there may also be some pancreatic weakness that I inherited, which also, of course, has to do with the liver. But then it was as a teenager that I started really like taking some more hits to the system. One of them was that at 14, so in addition to, starving myself for certain periods of time, I was also really, really became quite an avid athlete. I was a swimmer. So I did speed swimming and synchronized swimming, which I loved. I was just always been a fish. I love the water more than anything. But unfortunately, that meant like 4 to 5 hours 5 to 6 days per week for about 5 years that I was immersed, deeply immersed in, this chlorine pool situation, which includes this like gaseous layer right above the water, which as a swimmer, that's like where we live, that's where we're living and breathing. And they say that like different kinds of like chloroform is created, and also that in combination with like body substances and fluids, that some of these chemicals turn into like strange other chemicals and strange things. So of course in a public high school pool, I'm sure there was a lot of that. And again, as a public pool for kids, I'm sure they kept the chemical levels pretty high. I know that it was, always had that good smell. And of course, it's like everywhere, even around the pool. I remember like the hallway, coming closer to the pool. It was just the billowing effects of those gases. Eventually I started having, well, my hair was having issues. My skin was incredibly dry, but eventually I started like breaking out into hives, and which developed later into what I um, endearingly call the itchies, which was my like chronic urticaria symptoms. But I would develop these like really intense welts over the years that would come and go. One of my most fascinating, challenging symptoms, the itchies. Um, but also as a teenager, went down the drinking alcohol thing, which did not go that well for me. I was very sensitive to it. It was always compulsive for me once I started drinking, and I would easily black out. And bad things happened. I didn't really like it. And by the age of 21, I actually gave up alcohol pretty much. I haven't had to be like that black or white about it in more recent years, but it just really doesn't do that well for me. So again, if we look at like that, Adam Parker's story of the, the ability to sort of regenerate this ability to tolerate alcohol, well, then you could also say maybe pancreas and liver for me were already compromised even as a teenager to the point where alcohol was, really problematic and didn't process well. Additionally, in my teenage years, I was introduced to birth control, hormonal interventions, and I was unfortunately succumbed to a strange path. There's I had a variety of the hormonal interventions that I tried, and one thing that they offered to me in the inner city, Minneapolis, was the Depo shot. And I really don't think that that's, really common for in our country, except for maybe inner city stuff, but it's used a lot more in third world countries, and I'm not going to try to get too political about it, but it makes you lose your period for multiple months at a time. And for me, because I was an athlete and already thin, I didn't bleed for like 6 to 8 months, 9 months one time from one shot. And that drug, which is very strong, actually has a black box warning on it for fatal bone loss. So that's a really good thing to, give young girls, which actually, as a 16-year-old, I ended up fracturing my femur, which is the biggest bone in your body. It's the thigh bone. And that was just by running. I didn't fall or anything. And then I broke a couple other things, including 3 metatarsals just by tripping when I was 20, and ended up having a bone density scan. And I was diagnosed with osteopenia at 20, which is on your way to osteoporosis. So I'm guessing all of the things contributed to that, but the Depo-Provera has a black box warning for fatal bone loss. So I'm pretty sure that was a big part of it. Also, as a teenager, I stupidly received pretty notorious vaccine called Gardasil, and I received 2 doses. It's a 3-dose regimen. Probably if I had received that third one, I might not be here to tell this story right now, but 2 was definitely enough. I lost also a lot of my ability to do math around that time, and like problem solving areas of my brain kind of went down in a harsh way. I ended up having to drop down a couple levels of math in high school, and some things just shifted for me around academics at that time. So that was a really significant one, although I did not put all of these pieces that I'm putting together for you right now took me like 8-9 years to really piece together, after the point of when I started to get really sick. So we're not even there yet. I also received travel vaccinations for going to South American countries. I studied in college. I actually went to Honduras during high school for a semester, and then I went to Costa Rica, China, India, and New York was my, and Iowa was my college university experience. And in order to go to Costa Rica, and we also took field trips to Panama and Ecuador, I had to get a variety of vaccinations. Oh yeah, and then I also went to Europe after high school and I had to have some for that as well. And that was when you could see my bucket sort of starting to fill up and spill over. It started first with anxiety and depression, which were totally new for me, about 18 years old, 18, 19. And then when I was in India, I started experiencing really, really intense gut issues, digestive issues, gas pain, just a lot of pain, so much pain, digestive pain. And of course, all of the traveling sort of, and the fact that that sort of showed up at the beginning in India kind of colored my future thoughts around what I should be pursuing for treatment, leading me to parasites and down that track for a while at the beginning. Um, but the real collapse of my health didn't happen until 2012. So I was 22. I graduated college. I was really confused. My anxiety was really high and depression. I was really confused what I was doing with my life. I was about to go to Bastyr University for naturopathic doctorate program, but I decided not to. Um, and yeah, that was actually when I drank ayahuasca for the first time. It pretty much saved my life. But I moved to Hawaii for a short period of time where I contracted a staph infection in the back of my thigh. I ended up coming back to Minnesota. I was treating the staph infection at home on my own, really, rigorously, but apparently I just didn't have the right tools. And after about 3 weeks of like not even being able to lay down, it was really hardcore. I started to see like shooting like red streaks in my foot. And I was like, oh no, oh no, the infection is spreading into my bloodstream. And so I finally went to the hospital, unfortunately, and I was diagnosed with MRSA, a resistant strain of staph, and I was prescribed antibiotics, which of course I did not want to take, but I did. 10 days of, something kind of powerful. And it was really after that that I fully crashed. I um developed severe neurological fatigue um and brain inflammation. And I was pretty much bedridden for almost 2 years. And I had headaches every day. I had insomnia, you know, I had light and sound sensitivity. I had tons of digestive pain and gastric upset and just pain, gas pain, burning in the epigastric solar plexus region, shortness of breath, trouble breathing. I also suffered with bouts of bronchitis throughout my life. And I also had developed a TMJ. I started to have chronic ear infections at a certain point, teeth pain, eye pain, eye dryness, severe weakness and fatigue was some of the main stuff. Also cold, um, depression, pretty severe. I'll probably think of some more things, but this is when I went to the doctor. I had a whole page of symptoms, went to a regular doctor, got the money together, the energy, organized it, got to the doctors, and that was when they said, we don't see anything wrong with you. So you're probably just depressed. We can give you an antidepressant. And I was just so frustrated because here I had this page of symptoms. I also started to develop arthritis, other autoimmune conditions. I wasn't really much for gathering labels, but I'm pretty sure I could have gotten a Lyme diagnosis. I was kind of headed in the MS direction, I'd say. But yeah, some of this arthritis kind of stuff, pain and weakness in my legs. Oh, and the itchies. So I had these like chronic sort of flaring, and now I can probably see they're pretty histamine kind of related kind of thing. But I would develop these like welts all over my body. I have some crazy pictures. Sometimes a few times my face was literally completely disfigured by these itching welts. And they would come up in the creases, like kind of on my hips and on the side of my body. And always it starts at the scalp. Like the scalp gets really itchy. So that's been kind of one of the banes of my existence. That's also been happening for a long time. And the constant headaches. So after the doctors here totally failed me, and I was like, I know there's parasites going on. So I was like, I have to go to a different country where they know about these things. And that's when I went down to South America, drank a lot of plant medicine. Also, I was subjected to all of these crazy non-psychoactive plant medicines. I traipsed out into the jungle by myself to visit this curandera named Doña Otilia. It's pretty wild, pretty out there, traipsing through the jungle to lay on her floor and have her diagnose me. She diagnosed me with, she's like she was like a seer kind of doctor. And she diagnosed me with ulcers, which I ended up actually healing with cabbage juice, which was awesome. But she also said I had like something was wrong in my uterus, that there were growths or polyps or something, or that I was on my way to cancer or something like that. And I drank all these crazy brews that she gave me. She wouldn't even tell me what was going to happen. I was just like alone in this like lean-to in the jungle, and she'd bring me something to drink and I'd drink it. And then like 20 minutes later, I was like, had crazy diarrhea and was vomiting at the same time until I like blacked out for like 5 hours and then came to. And anyways, long story short, lots of that kind of stuff. It didn't really solve my problems, and I pursued really extensive, complicated healing diets. I did primal diet, which I still do some aspects of. I did medical medium, really strict for like 5 years. That's the celery juice, heavy metal detox, low fat, high plant, high color kind of diet. And sort of when I was plant-based is when I had first started liver flushing, but it wasn't until like many years later after the whole medical medium thing, and then I came around to the GAPS diet because I had actually kind of taken it as far as I could go with the fruitarianism and the fasting and the plant-based. I started having real issues with weakness and my teeth, sort of like the mineral levels dropping too low. And despite a lot of belief in it and also, doing my best to remineralize, I had gotten worse after COVID, and like some of the progress I'd made with like not having to sleep so much and having more energy, being able to exercise more, I had lost some of that progress after COVID and moving into a house that possibly had mold. And so the fasting and the fruit, it just was like I was kind of falling into this like dark hole of getting weaker, and not better. And eventually I decided to go full, I decided to kind of go full on into gaps. I'm gonna sneeze. And like all at once, I decided to give up sugar entirely. I'd actually fought for my life to get off of white sugar back in 2013. I went to 12 steps to get off of sugar, and it felt like a really, really crazy battle. But since then, I haven't been, on the hard stuff. But when I started GAPS, I gave up all honey and all fruit, which of course, coming from someone who is like had been fruitarian pretty strongly for a while, that was kind of a lot. But I just did it. I just gave it all up. And 2 weeks after that, I stopped having the histamine flares, the itching like stopped, which was very incredible, very awesome. And I continued with GAPS, and as I was coming back onto dairy, raw dairy, which I had loved in my days primal, I was, continuing to up my fat intake. I was also doing like the GAPS shakes, and I was starting to prepare to get back into liver flushing. And then when I liver flushed, wow, it was a really different experience than when I had done it plant-based and lower fat in the past, And so I had really big breakthroughs with that, and that started to show me that none of the cleaning of the body really works until you have the liver open and flowing, and this really lit my passion to help share this incredible procedure where we can actually like take matter out from inside of our organ and get rid of it. I mean, how cool. It's like you can almost do little mini surgery on yourself. And to just understand and glimpse in some way how powerful and important the liver is, that it's like we try to figure out how to detoxify everything, but we have this incredible built-in system that runs all those programs for us and is way smarter than us. And if we can just help it out to be able to do its job, then we're going to be a lot better off. So really started having some breakthroughs there. And now, I forgot to mention too that I it wasn't until my 20s that I actually developed some autism spectrum disorder sort of symptoms that I really don't see in my childhood. So there's a lot there to unpack. But I will say right now that I'm doing a lot better. I don't consider myself like debilitatingly sick anymore. And I'd say right now I'm like really working on, so like as we unpack the liver, and I'm going to talk about this in an upcoming video about just like what does healing actually entail. But as we unpack things, unexpected things can happen, or we might have to process something in another way. So I'd say right now I'm like really honing in on the emotional processing piece, the sort of trauma nervous system release and stabilization pieces that come sort of together with and building back the system, remineralizing, balancing those things. But it's like as you clear out the liver enough for movement to start happening, then there's also more room to process the emotions and the stuck things and the other aspects of our world and life that were repressed into different areas of our body. So I really think that the physical is an important part, that we can't totally bypass the physical system by just working on the emotional. spiritual trauma layers, but I do see that they work really awesomely in tandem. And so it's just like picking up the pieces for me of like, what did I need to learn when I had anger the first time? You know, what do I need to learn about allowing these emotions to flow and process and what they're really here for as I continue my liver flushing journey, which I'm still, you know, right smack in the middle of and experiencing really incredible things, seeing what is still coming out. So as I'm on the journey, I'm not saying I'm 100% there yet. I'm just saying that inviting you in to join the journey if real healing is what you're up for. And again, stay tuned for another video on what real healing really is. But it's so important to have the filter of our body able to filter so that this movement can be reintroduced. It's like the lymph can't move if the liver is not moving. If the liver is stuck and congested and like getting tighter and tighter, fuller and fuller, and there's no bile flow, there's just no flow. So then it's really hard to get these other aspects to start healing. And that was part of the breakthrough too, is like if you're not actually consuming foods that make your bile need to come, like fat, then it's a lot harder to get enough flow to break through any of that congestion doing an actual liver flush. So that's a little bit about my story and where I'm at. I'm sure I could have done a better job at keeping everything in the right order. But I just wanted to share that in case some of you are wanting to know me and my story a little bit better. So I'm wishing you a beautiful day. Thank you for tuning in, and may all beings be